Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hello, witches, and welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy. I am Morgan, and today I am joined by two amazing witches. They are from the podcast Back on the Broomstick. So I would like to introduce everyone to Laylla and Chelle.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chelle, and Laylla and I kind of started this podcast Back on the Broomstick. About a year ago now. We did have a previous podcast before that, and it just came about. Two friends who stopped living in the same town who just wanted to still kind of hang out and talk about witchy stuff. So I have been a eclectic witch of sorts for probably going on 30 years now, and no stopping me now. I'm back on the broomstick.
Yeah, I'm Laylla. Same. I've been an eclectic witch. I guess you could kind of say I'm a little bit of a hedge witch, pulled from a lot of different traditions, whatever works, basically. And I met Chelle a long time ago, and we were both kind of beginning witchcraft at that time and became fast friends and best witchy friends. And just like she said, we were on opposite sides of the country for a little while and started a podcast just so we could get back together like we used to, and here we are. We've seemed to have brought a lot of other people along for the ride, so we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah, so I want to tell you all about how I found you, because I think it's fun. I have been trying to find a witchy podcast for probably a year now. And either the ones that I really resonated with, they only did a few episodes and then kind of disappeared, or there was a lot of them out there. I don't know. They're like 2-hour long podcast episodes. And I'm like, I don't have time to listen to 2 hours of an episode. So it was when Jamie Della, I had her on my podcast and you all had her on yours. And so she had put a thing up, in her stories, like, oh, I'm over on Back on the Broomstick today. And I was like, what is this? And so that's actually how I found you all. I fell in love. So I started listening. I started back with like episode 1, and I would listen to them during my morning walk every morning, because my walk would be about 30 minutes. Your episodes are about 30 minutes. And I managed to catch up in the matter of just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the shorter episodes definitely make it easier to do that for sure.
Mm-hmm. We have found that, I listen to a couple different podcasts as well, and I agree with you. You got to keep it in that 30 to 40 minute, because that's all we got time for, folks. Life is busy nowadays, and although we would like to sometimes go on for hours talking, we would love that, and we have lots to say. Everybody's got stuff to do, so we try to fit it into what we think is our listeners' time frames.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. And I noticed there was a lot of subjects that kind of overlapped for the two of us this year as well, because I do a lot of subjects that correspond with our subscription box, which we plan out, at the beginning of the year. And so, as I was like, there was a lot of overlap, and I'm like, there just must be, I feel like maybe we're tapping into, like, because you all are like, oh, let's tackle this subject, and I'm over here like, oh, I want to tackle this subject, and then like you all had just done an episode on it like 2 weeks before that, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
It's like a connection, a cosmic connection. But I think I've noticed that there seems to be a lot of themes that trend a lot, and you'll see different things come up repeatedly, questions that people have, or things that other witches are looking into or kind of exploring, and I think that we start to see these universal trends, and we're all kind of tapping into those.
But in the same respect, we do try to take the view of what would we want to listen to? What would we want to hear about? What information are we looking for right now? So we kind of look at it from, if we were a listener, what information would we be seeking out, and how would we want that delivered to us? And that's really what we try to do. But I actually, secret stalker, on my personal Instagram, I actually have been following you for over a year. You always put out great stuff. I think you're super great. I am remiss that I did not know you had a podcast until recently. But I ended up following you on Instagram from our Back on the Broomstick page. And I was like, oh, wow, Ink Goddess Creations, they're so great. So I was super excited that you wanted to chat with us today. Because I do, after listening to some episodes, I think we're kind of all on the same vibe.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much for agreeing. So, and I thought today we're going to talk about witchcraft myths. This is actually something that some of my listeners have been like, hey, can you please do a witchcraft myths part 2? And I was like, I honestly, y'all's energy is so great. I was like, I would love to do this episode with you all, because I think it's going to be fun.
I think so too.
Now, I always kind of like to start with the dramatic. So
Yes.
I just want to dive in, and I've got something for you.
Yeah.
And after listening to a bunch of your episodes, you're going to feel me on how I feel about this and how I combat this. Let's talk for a minute about the assumption that all witches curse their enemies. Now, going back to, we just mentioned this in a few previous episodes, but going back to our original podcast, the Stoned Witches Hour, I have a funny story about, I will curse people I know with what I affectionately call my itchy asshole spell. Don't do me wrong if I know you, but witches aren't generally out there just cursing every random person that's cutting them off on the highway. You know, every girl that has been heartbroken is not cursing their ex. I promise you they're not. But I think that's a good way to start. What do you guys think about every witch cursing their enemies?
I actually had that one written down too.
Oh, good.
Same vibe. I'm telling you, same vibe.
Personally, hexes aren't usually my thing. I tend to like real world consequences or just boundary setting for the most part. But there are times when I think that curses could be or hexes could be necessary. I'm not a witch who's going to shy away from that if needed, but I do feel that they're way more serious than most people think, and they're pretty rare. But I mean, little curses, sure, but bigger hexes, I think those are less common than people think.
They are. And I think too, that was one of my favorite questions when I would be meeting people for, the first time, or just kind of, I don't know, there was a few years ago, well, like over a decade ago, I was on the dating scene for a few years, and it was, and that was something about me, like I'm a witch. Like, I'm going to put that out there very quickly. And the next question was, oh, are you going to hex me? And I'm like, I don't know. Are you going to piss me off?
Right.
Like, it's
I totally agree with that thought process.
like, I don't understand why that's always one of the go-tos. I feel like the go-to questions when people find out that you're a witch, they're like, oh, do you hex? Do you go around? And I'm like, I honestly have better things to do with my time and my energy. And
my
I
magical tools. Candles are not cheap. Oils are not cheap.
No, and for me, it's more about protection. Like, and I'm having to teach, I have an online coven that I teach, and we're actually doing banishings and bindings this month. And so I've taught a lot of them that there is a difference between banishing, like I call it putting bitches into jars, because I won't hesitate to put a bitch in a jar, but I am not hexing you or cursing you. I'm not adding baneful things to that jar. It is a protection jar to banish you from my life and keep you away from me.
Right.
Absolutely. Magical boundaries work.
Yes. So
But
that's where the difference is for me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of mirroring it back. I defend myself and mirror it back. But I will not lie. I have used my secret itchy asshole spell, and I'm not ashamed of it, but I don't feel that that's, I don't want to say it's not harmful. But I'm not out there, wishing super great harm on anyone. And I've only done it in one or two extreme instances, but overall, mirror method, what you send to me is just going to bounce right back to you. I am protecting my space, and if you're not putting anything out bad to me, then what gets reflected back isn't bad. So it's kind of you reap what you sow is how I look at my mirror magic.
I completely agree. That's a good one. So yes, not all witches curse, but maybe don't piss us off, just in case.
That's right.
Exactly.
We might.
We might. But more often than not, we're not.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth our energy.
Yeah. So I brought a good one that now that I live in Arizona, it's not, my comeback for it is not as great, because we have sun 365 days of the year. And even here in November, it is still 80 degrees outside. But the second thing after the hexing question, when I would tell people I'm a witch, is, oh, do you dance naked under the full moon?
Sometimes.
My comeback when I lived in South Carolina was like, it depends on the weather outside. Like it's too cold some nights. Like, no, it's too cold. But I love that one because it is one where it's like, do you live in the woods? Do you have neighbors? Do you have neighbors that care? Do you have high walls? Like
high walls?
Like around your house?
Brought this up.
I want high walls. It has nothing to do with witchcraft.
Or
not a
naked
thing.
all the time.
Yeah.
No, I had a listener just today actually ask us on our Facebook page. She's very interested in witchcraft, but she was worried that she would always have to practice skyclad or naked. And that was something that was very concerning to her. And no, the answer, what I told her is look for less traditional groups, look for less Wicca based groups, and you'll run into that a lot less. I find that tends to be more of a thing with traditional Wiccan, Gardnerian, Alexandrian Wiccan groups might have that, the idea of nothing being between you and deity, nothing being between you and nature, and that, as a sign of your trust, ye shall be naked in your rites. So that is a thing for some groups, but for the majority of witches, not a thing. We like to be comfortable. We like our fun clothes. We like our comfortable clothes and our pretty jewelry. So
I live in New England. I like my body heat.
Right.
I mean, it's 36 degrees right now. Imagine that. No, thank you.
And I have done some very, very powerful rituals, Skyclad. I am not going to knock it. There's definitely a place for it, and it can be a very magical thing. But you should never have to do it by necessity. You should never be told that there's no other choice, that you have to. It should always be your choice, and you should know the magical reasons behind it.
Only do what you're comfortable with.
That's right. Exactly.
And like we like to touch on all the time, there's no wrong here. You do it, you don't do it, neither of them is right or wrong. Whatever works for you is what's right.
Absolutely.
Not to mention warm.
That seems to scare a lot of people, the worry about being naked or skyclad, but yeah, not necessary for the most part. And if it's a group that does talk about being skyclad, you can always pick a different group.
That's true.
Absolutely.
All right. So what else did y'all bring?
Okay. We did an episode recently. We actually brought on some of our former coven mates. And we talked about this, but I have been seeing this all over social media, that all witches are female. False. But I also want to touch on, a male witch, that like sorcerer, magician, like why do they come up with weird a male witch, a female witch, you're a witch? It doesn't there what is a sorcerer and a magician? Why are they only male? And who came up with these words?
Not sure. Witch is definitely gender neutral. And I know many, many witches of all sorts of genders. So you can be whatever you want to be. And witches, from what I found, seem to be very accepting of whatever you would like to be. Great. We have a place for you in Circle.
Yep.
I
I have this one written down too. So, and we didn't even talk about what we were going to talk about today. I have this one written down as well. So I'm like, this is crazy. I'm just like, all right, that's two.
It's such a common misconception. And like Chelle said, the funniest thing to me is people arguing over, what should you call a male witch? Well, he's a witch.
A witch.
Just call him a witch. There's nothing else you really need to add to that. But I think because popular culture, the picture of the female witch with the big nose and the green skin, and it's always a woman. She's the evil one, and so I think that misogynistic misconception has kind of carried through to even today with the titles that we choose, and that kind of sucks.
But being currently in Witch City, USA, lest we not forget, there were people, Layla's favorite guy, her buddy Giles Corey, that were, even as far back as the Salem witch trials, there were men accused of witchcraft. And, the Wizard of Oz, Bewitched, all the pop culture, they kind of honed in on the female aspect. But as early as the Salem witch trials, they were accusing men. And I think people forget that men have been a part of witchcraft throughout time, and pop culture kind of inched them out, but the spirituality, the religion, the magical part of that never really inched them out. That was a pop culture thing.
I mean, look at who started all of this. I mean, you've got Gerald Gardner, you've got Scott Cunningham, you've got, all of them, Alistair, Crowley, all of them. You've got everything. That's a ton of guys back in the day. So they were all witches. And so I think ignoring modern history as well, if you try to say that men aren't witches.
But I think there's a resurgence in male witches, because I do think with females, it's kind of a constant, there's always female witches. And with men, there's more of like an ebb and flow of how many are out there publicly. And I think more male witches are starting to come out publicly than in the past. I think male witches are more prone to stay in the closet longer. But I think that whether it be internet, social media, whatever, I think a lot more male witches are coming out of that broom closet.
Yeah, and one of my gals here actually just asked me today. She's learning, so she's new to all of this. She's been working with us or working for us for a few months now. So we're really teaching her, I'm going back to like Witchcraft 101 to, kind of get her filled in. But she asked me, she's like, so what's a wizard? And I'm like, you know what? That's a great question, because I know that like warlock, which is generally used in pop culture for a male witch, that means like oath breaker or something. It translates to liar or oath breaker or something. So generally speaking, male witches definitely don't use that. She's like, well, what's a wizard? And I'm like, from fantasy. That's all I know. Like, it's not a thing, because I had to tell her, I was like, a male witch is a witch. It's a witch. So do either of you know by any chance wizard, like where the hell that came from?
I do know a few people, mostly men, that call themselves wizards because they feel that they're not witches. They use magic, but not necessarily what they would call witchcraft. So I've met a couple that use that term, but I think it's a self-identifying thing to maybe separate themselves slightly from witchcraft.
Okay.
But that's the only time I've ever seen that really used.
Well, as far as pop culture, my children are adults now, but when my kids were little, my life was one big Disney movie over and over and over again. Layla is my witness. And I think back to The Sword and the Stone and Fantasia, and I almost feel, maybe I'm wrong, call me nuts, which a lot of people do, but I think that was kind of a Disney word. And when I think of wizard, my first thought is Disney.
Yeah.
The wizard and, Merlin the wizard and Sword in the Stone. And I think that was a Disney word in my mind.
Could be.
Yeah. Because I don't know. I told her, I was like, me personally, I've never met anyone that called themselves a wizard. I know it was made extremely popular, of course, by Harry Potter. Because they were not witches. Woo! Or at least the boys were not witches in the Harry Potter. Yeah. But I was like, I've never, and even the men that I know that practice magic but are not witches, they're ceremonial magicians. That's how they identify. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know where wizard came from.
Maybe it's a new thing. Maybe it goes along with the new trend to really identify what type of witch you are. A lot of people now are very much into, like we pretty much all say eclectic. Oh, I'm eclectic because I pull from all these different things. But now it seems to be very popular to name yourself a specific type of witch.
You're a water witch,
So
or you're a
maybe
forest witch, or a fairy witch. Yeah.
So maybe the wizard thing it goes along with that a little bit. I'm not sure. But a witch is a witch. No matter what you are, you're a witch.
And I do think there is a resurgence of male witches coming out of the broom closet.
Thank goodness, because I love male witches. Really, really. Who doesn't?
I do too. Yeah.
Okay, what do you have next on your list? Because I'm curious to see if it's another thing we have on our list.
I've got one that I'm pretty interested to talk about because I see this as being kind of a hot topic and a little contentious on some of the boards that I'm on. But the rule of three, the idea of the rule of three, is that a thing in witchcraft? And does it matter? Is that something that you should follow? What is the rule of three, and is it a real thing?
Wow, that's deep.
Right?
No, that's a good one. And it's actually something, so I posted a fun little reels, it's probably over a month ago now. It just went with this fun audio that the audio says like something about, oh, you fucked up now. And so in my mind, I created a video that went with it where I rolled up to, it's just my picture altar, but I mean, it's set up as an altar all day long. And then with like a black candle and a jar, and the thing I put at the top was when you piss off a witch, and that was it. And I posted it because I'm like, oh, this is funny. Nope. So the internet does not have a sense of humor. A lot of the internet does have a sense of humor, but a lot of it does not. And the first thing that, of course, I got the crazy Christians, repent your sins, da, 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 da. I'm like, all right, okay. But then I started getting the and harm none, what you put out comes back to you times 3, and da, 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 da. I finally got to the point where a month later, I was still having to monitor comments. And I was just like, you know what? So I finally turned comments off because I was tired of I get the scrutiny from outside of the witch community, the Christians who do not understand, the people that do not understand. But the judgment within the witchy community of the people telling me, oh, you're a petty witch because of this. And I'm like, okay, first of all, there's nothing in this that says anything about cursing. It's a fun little, joke of a reel. But by you saying like the law of 3 is Wiccan, and not all witches are Wiccan.
Yes.
And so I think
that right there is the first problem, because I think that not everybody understands that.
Yes.
I don't think that is explained well enough on the internet. Just because you're a witch doesn't mean you're Wiccan.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. I spent about a week trying to educate, because that's what I try to do is, and actually that is the last one I have on my list, goes right along with that, which is that Wicca is an ancient religion, because I actually did get into,
Oh, boy.
there was a woman who was telling me that the law of three was from Hecate.
Oh,
And
oh,
I'm
wow.
like, oh no, the law of three
That's
was,
a new one.
is Wiccan in origin, and
Yeah,
came from Gerald Gardner.
yeah. It's
So
the whole part of the whole Wiccan read, and
I'm still
honestly,
trying to wrap my head around rule of three and Hecate.
yeah,
Whoa, whoa. Okay. Okay.
I really think, honestly, even from back in ancient times, the 30s, I think that the rule of three, I think even then the rule of three was really just for newbies to not go willy-nilly, like cursing everyone that pissed them off, and to really think about the magic before they did it. There's no, as far as I
Teaching
have found.
boundaries.
Right. Yet Hakate notwithstanding, I have not ever found a god or deity that is in charge of the rule of three. There's the whole idea of karma, but I think that's different than what modern witches have kind of wrapped up into this whole whatever you do is going to come back to you three times as good or bad. And I really just think it's more of a cautionary thing rather than an actual law.
And I kind of, when I've been asked about it, because I think we've all been asked about it, similar to karma, I say, I might not be hard and fast with the rule of three, but I do believe in karma. They're kind of similar thought processes, but I'm not necessarily 100% hardcore Wiccan. Do I do Wiccan things? Absolutely. But the beauty of this is you take what you want and you leave the rest. And if you choose to take the rule of three, rock on with your bad self. But that doesn't mean everybody else does.
It's a good rule to live by. I mean, it really helps make you think. One of the things I like to teach my students is less the rule of three and more, are you willing to take the consequences of your actions? Because no
Right.
matter what you do, there will be consequences. If you're mad at someone and you cast a spell against them, it's very similar to if you throw a punch at their face because you're pissed at them. There will be some type of consequence. And that can be mitigated by all sorts of factors. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get punched back in the face. So it's just an idea to think about what you're doing before you do it. Consider the reactions and be willing to
Absolutely.
take those consequences, I guess, is the biggest part of it.
yeah. And I think it's found in just about every either culture or religion. I mean, even, I grew up with do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which
Same thing.
yeah, it's the golden rule. I never was quite, I don't know if that came from the Bible, if that was like a Bible verse, or if it was just something, because I grew up in the South, so I don't know where it came from. But so I think everyone has something like that. And then something that I never had put it into words, but listening to y'all's podcast, I loved it. Magic is like for like.
Yes.
Or like for like magic is the strongest. I was like, that's it perfectly sums up what it's called. So, if you're trying to attract good things back to you, if you're going around being a dick,
You're
that's
not
not
getting
gonna.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yes,
yeah,
it's
when
the
you
same
want to,
thing. And the whole idea of karma is much, much bigger than the rule of three. And it's lifetimes. Like, you don't necessarily get the repercussions, good or bad, karmically in this lifetime. We're talking much longer terms here than this very fast rule of three idea. So I think people are kind of conflating the two, and they're different concepts. But you're exactly right, Morgan. It's everybody has kind of this different idea of, what you put out there, you're going to get back, and it's true. It's just not necessarily a magical law that's going to strike you down. It's just a good thing to live by.
And as it relates directly to magic, as opposed to life in general, like Layla said, you have to sit there and ask yourself, am I willing to deal with the consequences or the repercussions? Because call it what you want, rule of three, karma, reaping what you're sowing. You know, it's like a boomerang. The energy you put out comes back to you. And if you're putting out shit energy, you're getting shit energy back.
Right.
And, you know, we all try to be good people, and we all want good to come to us. So we try to put out good. But, you know, there was a time 20, 25 years ago where I found myself in a situation involving one of my children. And I said, Layla, I need to do this. And she said, are you willing to, are you willing to? Yes, I am. And off we went. And because it was with my kids, I was ready to saddle up and deal with it. But am I just shooting out bad energy and hexes and curses to the guy who cut me off on the highway? No, because I don't want to be the one with a flat tire 2 miles down the road. You get what you put out, whether that's good or bad is up to you. And sometimes there's people who put out good their whole life and get shit back. I'm not saying that's not true. And some people just put out shit their whole life and get good back. I don't know. Maybe they were born under a better sign than I was. But assume that you put out good, you're going to get good back. Attract.
Good idea.
Like attracts like.
I wonder if it was also a drawing point. Like if you're thinking about, like, if you're starting this new religion, like from Gerald Gardner's standpoint, like, oh, I'm going to get this new religion out there. We're going to do this, and hey, whatever you put out comes back to you times 3, which means if you're a good person, look at all the good shit that comes back to you if you follow Wicca.
Yeah, it could absolutely have been PR. I mean, right down to trying to not look like the bad guys. Oh, we're not bad. We believe in the rule of 3. That's something that you can tell people. I get a lot from people that follow particular religions that because we don't have a book, that we don't have rules we can live by. So how do we know how to be good? So maybe the rule of 3 and that whole idea was the answer to, see, look, we're not bad witches. We're good witches because we follow this do no harm kind of idea. And
can't everybody just be good people without having books to tell them to be good people? Can't you just wake up in the morning and be a good damn person?
Apparently not to some religions. They find that concept strange, but I don't know. Witchcraft's a little more personal responsibility than that. So.
Yeah.
One thing, I don't want to take up all of our session, but one last thing I wanted to touch on, especially being where I'm at right now, in Salem. What are your thoughts on people thinking that all witches were burned at the stake? Which, by the way, 0 were burned at the stake. I just want to put that out there. How did that come about? Do you know where that came about?
I don't. Except for the fact that during the witch trials, it was beheadings, drownings, and burning at the stake were the 3 general ways that people, but the people that were killed during the witch trials weren't witches.
Not even my man Giles Corey, who was
not even your man. He was pressed to death. But here in Salem, people were hung and people were pressed to death. Nobody was burned. There was no fires. People weren't lit ablaze. Hung, yeah. Stoned to death, yeah. Witches, no. But why do people associate the witch trials with burning witches? And I don't know where in history that got picked up. But witchcraft was actually a felony in both England and the American colonies. So they were hung. That was what they did for what they considered felony type and because they considered at one point witchcraft treason, and they were hanging you and making a spectacle. They weren't lighting people on fire. And I just don't know where that came from. And I don't understand why people in 2023 still believe that. It makes for interesting artwork, I'll give you that, but it didn't happen. At least in America, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think some of them, I'm reading a book now called Healing the Witch Wound, which the beginning of it goes over.
Layla is too.
I'm also reading that book.
So the beginning goes over it, and I love that it gave me like, oh my God, what's 500 years of witch history in like 3 chapters. I was like, thank you, because I needed that. And I think they were burned. It depends on the country, but I want to say that was like Europe. Some of them
Okay.
were burned.
Just
But
a
no,
quick plus for that book, Healing the Witch Wound. I'm just through like the first part of it, but I'd have to say that it is probably the best, most condensed, easy read, quick history, like you said, of 500 years of witch trials and persecutions. It just in one little place, it was very well done. So if you want to read about that, Healing the Witch Wound.
All right, I'm gonna have to go buy this book now. You convinced me.
I think I mean, not that there were good or bad, but my favorite test to see if someone was a witch was throwing them in water. And if they floated, they were a witch. And if they drowned, they were innocent.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you
but
gotta love that one.
How I don't understand the logic in that. So if you're not a witch and you're drowned, you're dead. How's that fair?
Bad. The other good one was the witch's marks, where they would look if you had a mole or a scar or some type of scratch or mark anywhere on your body. And then if you didn't have one, that was proof that you hid them with witchcraft. So there
Right.
was no winning for these people. Terrible. Did I freeze or did Morgan freeze?
I think she froze. We'll give it a minute, see if she unfreezes.
okay, so what you all probably did not know is that I just completely lost internet and even the ability to have internet on my laptop. So Chelle and Layla kept going. Thank
We
you
pinch
so
hitted
much.
for you. We pinch hitted for you. But you know, I was just telling Layla that I do know a lot about the American witch trials, you know, Salem, Connecticut, up and down the East Coast, but I really don't know a damn stinking thing about the European witch trials. So y'all have convinced me. I'm going to buy the book. Damn you all, adding it to my stack.
Celeste Larson, Healing the Witch Wound.
I'm on it.
But I do have to say, I now Shell's love is from Salem. He grew up there, and we've had conversations before. He does not understand why so many witches, because no witches were actually killed there. Why do witches come there now? And he was confused. So we've had that conversation quite a bit. And personally, I feel that it has become kind of a draw for witches because of that type of persecution that we still face. You know, witches are still not given the same kind of rights or the same kind of credibility that other religions are. And
Well, look at Pennsylvania a couple months ago.
yeah, exactly. With the no divination and the witch walk that got protested by the local church. But being able to go to Salem, a place where we can kind of reclaim that word and reclaim that power, is very, very moving to people. You know, to go to this spot where there was so much torment of innocent people, not that they were necessarily witches, but they used that word. They used our religion, our belief system to torment people and to kill people. And so to try to understand that and to reclaim that, I think is a very powerful motivator for people to go there.
But you know what I've noticed in the 3 years that I've lived here is this is a place where you're not judged for being a witch.
You're celebrated.
I went to work one day with my cloak on, mainly because I was cold as shit. And I was like, ooh, this will be warm. But like, I can do that. I couldn't do that when I was living in upstate New York. Here, I can rock on with the greatest of witchy attire and no one looks at me weird walking down the street. And generally, they probably are more witchier looking than I am. You know,
It's the dream.
it is. But like, I think a lot of it has to do with this is the one place you can get your freak on and be who you are and, you know, be that outwardly witch and not a damn person is going to judge you.
Yeah, and in a way it's healing that witch wound, you know? That's what it is. So we all, if all the witches, the ones who do identify as witches, who are open or not open or whatever, but they do identify as witches, go there and pour that energy into it, then, it heals the land, it heals the energy there, it transforms it from something negative where the word witch would get you stoned or hung or whatever, even if you weren't one. But yeah, to where now kind of taking back that power and reclaiming it for us again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned to heal the land, heal the space where it happened, because I do think that the land holds on to those energies, that type of, that history, it's a wound in the place itself, and being able to go there and kind of, like you said, heal that and bring positive energy to that is such a blessing, and such a blessing, not just for you, but for the place itself, in my opinion.
Boy, you love those spirit of place.
I do. Well, they're everywhere, man. You can't get away from it.
All right. Well, I am actually getting a notification that oh, no, I've never been, actually. It's something that I definitely want to do one day. But yeah, I've never been.
Everybody should come once.
We'll take you around. Chelle's a great tour guide.
Yay! Oh, I love that.
But then we'll have to go visit warm Arizona, where I can actually not freeze my buns off all day.
Yeah, and I can take, so I do Sedona over here with all the energy vortexes. It's about 3 hours away, but I at least know where the vortexes are and how to get to them. So
I'm a fuck around and find out kind of girl. I am into vortexes.
They're great. I absolutely love, that's my place of zen up there, is to just go and sit. There's one that has a creek with it. And so I would just sit there with my feet in the water and just sit. Because
nothing like it when you find a place that touches your soul like that, and you can just go and feel that energy and just be perfect. Chelle likes to do that by the water up in Salem.
I do. I come from a very forested area in New York, and there's something about this ocean that I can't shake. I love it. I love it. I love that. That is the best part to me. The best part of being in Salem is I'm near the ocean.
Not all the witchy
I do
people
miss
that
that.
walk around.
Okay, I like walking around in my cloak any time of year and not getting judged, but the ocean, top notch.
All right. Well, yes, because I'm getting an unstable internet connection warning again. So I hate to do this because this has been super fun. And I definitely, maybe in the future we can come back together again, do anything you all want to do, but
Absolutely.
A witchcraft, maybe a Witchcraft Myths Part 3. But before we jump off, let everyone know where they can find you all.
You can find us online. Our website is backonthebroomstick.com. You can also listen to our podcast there or wherever you get your pods.
You can get us on Instagram, Back on the Broomstick, Facebook, Back on the Broomstick, or you can email us at backonthebroomstick@gmail.com. Or if you want to just chat with us, just get online, get social, respond, comment, like, share, all those happy things.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This was a lot of fun.
We definitely have to do this again.
Thanks for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And to the listeners out there, thank you for listening, giving me a platform to share my knowledge, have amazing guests on like Laylla and Chelle. And thank you for just, being here so I can be me. And until next time, I will see you all then. Bye. If you're looking for a magical community where you can just be yourself, check out my Ink Spirit Coven. The Coven is an online learning circle for eclectic witches who want to learn new witchcraft practices and how to easily incorporate magic into their daily lives, all while being supported on their personal spiritual journey. And you'll have me as your magical mentor, sharing my knowledge, answering questions, and facilitating the online community. Head to inkspirit.com to learn more and join. And if unique witchcraft supplies made by witches for witches is just what you need, head to my store, inkgoddesscreations.com, to see what we have to enhance your magical practice. We also have the Ink Goddess Creations box, a monthly subscription of magic mail filled with exclusive items that fit a magical theme. Head to the site to see this month's theme and sneak peeks.